Story 1. For the past few days, I've been alone at home, just me in an empty apartment. A little while ago, my boyfriend got offered a really good job in another state. We've been wanting to move out of Florida for a long time. So when he got the job, we packed up and left town, even though we had already paid rent for a whole month in our old apartment. I didn't get to say bye to some really close friends, I thought to myself. Since we'd already paid the rent for the month, I decided to return by myself and spend a couple more weeks here. Luckily, my job gives me the flexibility to work remotely or from the office in Florida. So even though the apartment feels empty without my boyfriend, I still have a good place to work and keep me busy. When I said the apartment was empty, it wasn't totally true, I admitted. I had a big piece of furniture that I chose to sell instead of taking with us. So I put it up for sale on Craigslist. But here's where things took a weird turn. I put my address on the post, but it didn't stay up for long. Thankfully, the furniture sold on the same day, which was nice. Since I posted the ad yesterday, some strange stuff has been going on. At first, it didn't seem too weird. But you see, I have a cat, so I'm used to hearing noises all the time. Most of the time, it's just him being his mischievous self. He enjoys knocking things over either for fun or to annoy me. One evening, while I was lying on my air mattress, reading my favorite book, I heard a lot of noise coming from the kitchen. Is it just him being noisy again, I wondered. Shrugging it off, I went back to reading, assuming it was just the cat causing a ruckus. Then I remembered, wait, my cat isn't even here. We took him to our new place. So I awkwardly rolled off the air mattress, trying to be as quiet as possible. I went to the kitchen to see what was making the noise, and there I found a few red Solo cups that had been on the counter, now scattered on the floor. I looked around and the only thing I could think of was that the fan was on and it blew them off. That's what I convinced myself to believe so I could sleep, I muttered to myself. But the truth is, those cups had been on the counter all day, and the fan had been running for hours. Why did they suddenly fall now? I tried not to think about it too much. I turned off the lights, read a bit more on my Kindle, and eventually fell asleep. I woke up around 3 a.m. to a strange noise I recounted. It sounded like someone was shaking a jar of coins or a set of keys. I'd never heard anything like it before. It seemed like it was coming from outside the apartment, but it was really loud. As soon as I got out of bed, the noise stopped. I turned on all the lights in the house, but I couldn't find where the noise was coming from. So I went back to bed with all the lights still on. It felt safer with the lights on, and I fell asleep quickly. When I woke up this morning, I continued. I didn't notice until I turned on the bathroom light that all the lights in the house were off. No one has ever said I sleepwalk, I pondered, but I couldn't think of any other reason why all the lights were off. The front door is locked with a deadbolt and a regular bolt, I reassured myself. After I showered and dressed, I looked for my keys but couldn't find them in my purse. I thought maybe I accidentally put them in the freezer with the groceries or left them on the kitchen counter, I speculated. But I checked everywhere and they weren't there. I looked in the freezer, microwave, counters, but my keys were nowhere to be found. Then I remembered the jingling sound I heard during the night, I recalled. I checked outside even though it was unlikely for my keys to be there. The only way they could have ended up outside is if they fell out of my bag when I came into the house, I reasoned. I stepped outside and there were my keys on the welcome mat outside my front door, covered in something red. That's when I realized I might have messed up by putting my address on Craigslist for that ad, I admitted. I'll see what happens tonight, but I'll be honest, I confessed. I'm starting to think I might leave early and not stay here for the rest of the rent. Story 2. My current phone has become a bit slow, so I decided to buy a new phone from Craigslist. Within a few minutes, I stumbled upon what seemed like the perfect deal, a brand new iPhone 12 for just $400. So I tried to contact the seller right away. However, they didn't respond. I found it a bit odd, but I brushed it off, thinking they might be busy. I kept messaging them, but still no reply. Eventually they did. He only sent me his address, nothing else, I recalled when I replied. He didn't say anything more and just kept ignoring me after giving me the address. The next day I made a dumb decision and went to his house. As I drove down the rough street, it looked like no one lived in any of the houses, but I simply ignored it and went to his place. The house was dark, and the wood looked old and bumpy, I remembered. As I walked to the front door, I saw that the grass was tall and rough, almost up to my knees, like a whole foot high. When I got closer to the front door, It just swung open, and I almost tripped on the rocky ground behind me. Then out of nowhere, the guy came out and yelled, "Do you want the phone or not?" He had a deep voice. "Yeah, I have $400 in cash." "Is that okay?" I asked nervously. He grabbed it from me and slammed the door in my face. I started yelling, "Hey man, what's going on?" I was getting angry and upset at the same time, not knowing what to do. He kept me waiting at the door for what felt like a really long time. Eventually, he opened it just enough to hand me the phone. I took it and said thanks. Then I turned around and walked away, not hearing him close the door. When I started my car, I looked back and saw him still staring at me. It gave me the creeps. So I pushed down hard on the gas pedal and sped off down the street. When I got home, I was too tired to set up the phone, and I fell asleep as soon as my head touched the pillow. When I woke up and turned on the phone, I noticed something odd. I realized it was still logged in with the previous owner's account. Probably the creepy guy who sold it to me. Feeling a bit nosy and curious, I thought. I opened the phone, and it turns out the guy didn't even have a password. When I opened the phone and went to the home page, I navigated to the Photos app. But when I opened it, there was nothing there, no photos in the camera roll. But then I checked the albums, and that's when I found something. There was an album titled "A Fun Night" with a winking emoji at the end. I thought the pictures or videos in there would be really unique, but they weren't. There were only 2 videos. Then I did something I regretted. I played the first video I admitted. When it started, the screen was black, and all I could hear was the sound of gentle rain. After a few seconds, the camera moved up, startling me. It happened so fast. The camera was facing a car outside, staying focused on it for more than 30 seconds. What's happening? I thought to myself, confused as I sat on my bed watching this video. Then, suddenly, a woman opened the car door and stepped out. I didn't know this woman, and I'd never seen her before. The camera kept focusing on her, and then a man started laughing like a maniac. That's when I froze. I recognized that voice I recalled. It was the same voice as the man who sold me this phone. I wondered, is this video some kind of joke? After the first video ended, I watched the second one. I noticed it was much longer than the first. The first one was 2 minutes long, but this one was 7 minutes. It began with a black screen and the sound of rain, just like the first one. But this time it was in an old warehouse. Around 45 seconds in, I heard faint crying like a woman's. I didn't watch the video, I confessed, because my gut feeling told me something wasn't right. I didn't waste any more time and called the police. I showed them the video and explained how I got the phone. Thankfully, they took it seriously and went to the creepy guy's house. But he was already gone. The house wasn't his, it was just an abandoned house. The police took my phone to find more information. It has been a while, and I still haven't gotten my phone back. So next time I concluded, I should just buy a phone from a mobile shop. Story 3. I often go for walks around my neighborhood, but this time I decided to explore new territories. So one day I found out there's a park a few miles from my house. The park is really big, with lots of trees and open spaces. As I was walking around enjoying the sights, I reminisced. I spotted the opening of a trail that seemed different from the ones I usually take. It really caught my eye, so without thinking much, I started exploring it. It was getting darker, probably just after 7 o'clock, I noted, and because of that I wasn't planning on going too far from the main path. The park had a rule that everyone needs to leave by a certain time. Also, I didn't want to be alone in the woods when it got dark. So after walking for a bit, I ended up leaving the main trail and exploring a different part of the park. I must have walked for more than a mile. When I figured it was time to head back home, it was getting darker, and I was worried about getting lost. But just before I decided to go back, I continued. I saw a cabin off to the left in the distance. I don't know why, but I felt like I had to go check it out. I'm really glad I did, I reflected, even though the night turned out to be the scariest night of my life. As I approached the cabin, the daylight seemed to fade away rapidly, making everything dark. I knew I should have left, but I couldn't resist checking out the cabin. I started worrying about how far I'd wandered, I admitted, thinking I might be on someone's private land. This park isn't like a camping site or anything, it's just a regular park. So when I saw there was a cabin, it surprised me. I couldn't tell if someone lives there or what was going on with it, but it clearly seemed like nobody had taken care of it for years. Suddenly I heard a loud noise, I recalled. That sounded like someone hitting something really hard. It scared me, and I almost ran off. but then I took a few steps closer to see where the noise was coming from. When I went to the back of the cabin, I saw a girl about my age in the basement, banging on the window and shouting for help. I could tell right away that something was really bad, I remembered. I ran to her and tried to open the window, but then she looked even more scared and signaled me to be quiet by putting her finger to her lips. I understood right away that she wanted me to stay silent. I saw I couldn't open the window, I explained, and I knew I had to do something fast, so I tried to call the police on my phone, but there was no signal. I felt really scared and didn't know what to do. I went as close to the window as I could and used my phone's notes app to ask her if she was in trouble. She nodded yes, I recounted. Then I told her if she knew if there was anyone else in the cabin or around the property at that moment, but she shook her head, indicating she had no clue. I assured her that I would help her escape and to keep calm. I ran to the front of the cabin, I continued, carefully scanning the surroundings for any signs of danger and quietly tried to turn the doorknob, but as expected, the front door was already locked. So I walked around the whole cabin trying to open every window, but they were all locked too. So I ran to the woods, searching for something to break a window with. After a while, I found a big stone that looked like it could work. I hurried back to the girl, showed her the stone, and then I threw the stone as hard as I could at the window, breaking the glass completely. She got up, and I grabbed her hand to pull her out, but it didn't work. The window was too small for her to fit through. That's when I did something unexpected, but it was necessary, I admitted. I went to the side of the cabin and smashed one of the big windows with the same stone. I peeked inside to make sure nobody was there, and luckily I didn't see anyone. Then I jumped into the cabin. I carefully checked every room, and it seemed like nobody else was there. Then I went to the basement and found her. Someone had locked her up there alone in a small cage, about 5 by 8 feet. She had lots of bruises, scars, and dried blood on her body. I finally found a big hammer, I recounted, and I used it to break the lock open. I rushed to the girl, but she was so thirsty and hungry that she could hardly move. I helped her upstairs and put some shoes on her that I found near the front door. We hurried as much as we could and went straight to my car. Since we had a long way to go, and she was limping while I had to carry her, it was going to take some time. While we were leaving the front porch, I remembered, we heard a car far away. It was getting dark, so we could hardly see anything. Emily, the girl I rescued, thought it might be the man who kidnapped her. I didn't want to take any risk, so we kept walking. He was getting closer, so we had to hurry to avoid being seen. We moved as fast as we could, considering the situation, and thankfully, he didn't spot us. We were far away by the time he reached the cabin. I'm not sure how long it took him to realize Emily had escaped, I admitted. I took her to the hospital, and she told the police everything she knew about the man and what he did to her. I stayed by her side at the hospital, comforting her until we received assurance from the doctors that she was going to be fine. I never had the chance to get a full report from the police, I confessed, and I don't know where Emily is today, but I hope she is doing well. For me, I still have nightmares about that night. Story 4. 2 years ago, my girlfriend and I went on a trip in a car. We were supposed to drive for 2 days. At the end of the first day, we stopped to sleep. We found an old motel. It looked cool and had lots of colors, I recalled. There were small trees and plants everywhere. There was an old couple working there. They said they owned the place, and they were nice. We talked about our trip, and then we went to our room and unpacked. The room wasn't very nice, to be honest, I admitted. It was old and not updated. But we felt happy staying there because the old couple was friendly, and we wanted to support them. My girlfriend and I watched TV for a while before we got tired. Then I turned off the TV and lights, and we went to sleep. In the middle of the night, I woke up because I heard footsteps in our room, I recounted. I was still sleepy, so I looked around but didn't see anything and went back to sleep again. Later, I woke up again, feeling like someone was watching me. I looked up and saw the old couple standing at the end of the bed, smiling at me. I felt like I was going to have a heart attack. I asked them why they were there. The old woman said they were just checking if we were sleeping well, I explained. I thought they were crazy. My girlfriend said she was calling the police and took out her phone. The old man apologized and said it wasn't necessary. She called the police anyway. I told the old couple to leave our room. They kept saying sorry and then left. The police arrived within a few minutes, I continued. The old couple confessed to entering our room with a spare key. But they still said they just wanted to check if we were okay or not. This was one of the weirdest things I ever heard. The police asked if we wanted to press charges, but we said no. I felt sorry for them and thought they were just strange. The rest of our trip was good, but now whenever we stay at a hotel, we make sure to check the door twice. Story 5. About 10 years ago, I moved to Seattle. When I arrived, I didn't have a job or a place to stay, and it's hard to rent a place without a job. Even though I had some money saved up, I didn't have many choices for where to live. So I looked at ads on Craigslist and Facebook, but it was rare to find a place that would let me rent it. Then one day I found a room to rent on Craigslist. It was one room in the basement of a house, and it had its own bathroom. It cost a lot, even though it was just a room. I believe it was about $800 per month, paid up front. When I got there, I recounted. The landlord welcomed me and gave me a tour of the house. The house was pretty old, and there wasn't a living room, only a kitchen and laundry room that everyone shared. Upstairs, there were 3 bedrooms, and downstairs there were 2 more at the time. 3 other people lived there, I noted, and they all seemed friendly. When I first met them, there was an older man called George, a young woman named Angela, and a guy around his mid-30s named Kirk. I didn't talk to them much because I was busy moving in and searching for a job. The first few days were kind of boring, I admitted. I'd see the other roommates around, but we didn't really talk much. It wasn't until about a week later that things got strange. I remember one day when I came home and noticed Kirk was acting weird. I recalled. I think he looked a bit upset. He kept walking around in the kitchen, and when he noticed me, his mood changed instantly. Then he said hi with a smile. That night I heard odd sounds coming from Kirk's room. His room was in the basement close to mine. It sounded like he was moving furniture or something. Now that I think about it, I realized that was definitely a warning sign. That morning I went to make coffee, and Kirk walked in. We didn't speak. But there was a weird feeling in the air. I recounted, and I felt really uncomfortable, though I couldn't say why. In the following days, I began to notice more strange things about Kirk. He would often come home late at night. I observed, and I could hear him talking quietly to himself in his room. I thought he was on his phone at first, but that didn't seem right. I'm pretty sure he was talking to himself. One night, I woke up to the sound of screaming. I continued. It was coming from Angela's room. I got out of bed and ran towards the room, but as I got closer, I could hear Kirk's voice, and he was saying something to Angela. I didn't know what to do, so I stayed back and listened. After a few minutes, the screaming stopped and everything went quiet. I couldn't sleep for the rest of the night. In the morning, I told Angela what happened. She looked really scared and didn't want to talk about it. I knew something was really wrong, but I didn't know what to do. I thought about calling the police, I admitted, but I didn't have any evidence that something was really wrong. I'm still not sure what happened that night. In the following days, Kirk seemed to get even worse, I recalled. He would get angry over small things. Then, about a week later, Kirk stopped coming out of his room altogether. I was starting to worry about my safety and the safety of the other roommates. It wasn't until a few days later that everything got really bad. When I came home from work, I explained. I found George sitting on the front porch, looking very upset. He told me he went into Kirk's room to ask him to turn down the music, but he found something really scary. There were knives and other sharp things all over the room, George explained, and there was a big stain that looked like blood on the floor. We called the police, I recounted, and told them what George found. They came and searched the house. They found out that Kirk had left, probably running away as soon as George saw his room. The police found proof that he was planning something really bad, I added. They managed to find Kirk a few days later. He got arrested and faced charges.